Would you want to go on a game show like that? Like, I'm sure you watched them growing up, but like to
Um,
me, I would kill to go on that show. I don't care what the prize is. And like I don't know if he was faking it because he was, an audience member technically, and he had to be all excited, but he was geeked about winning that car.
I think he was probably more impressed that he won, so he was probably happy with himself as opposed to the gift. But he could be happy that he got a gift that he can gift to somebody. He can re-gift that car if he
That's a
doesn't
good
want it.
point. But I mean, it's on national TV. If you're regifting that, everybody kind of knows it.
Welcome to the CJ McCollum Show. I am currently recording this in Washington, D.C. As I forgot this morning, I'll be heading to Boston shortly. Across from me, as always, is Izzy Gutierrez. Izzy, we just wrapped up a game. Obviously, this podcast will come out Thursday, so we will have – what's today?
You guys got Boston on Wednesday, so you're just coming off of what will probably be a very hard-fought victory. Let's just do that. Let's just predict the future.
Let's say we had a hard-fought victory. Obviously, still shorthanded. BI is still out with a toe injury. I'm imagining he's not going to play on Wednesday, so this is safe for me to say. He's battling back. He's been, ramping up his rehab based on what I can see, and all signs point to him hopefully returning soon. He's been out for a while, and obviously we miss him. We need him out there, and he changes the dynamic of our team. Zion is still hurt and will not be playing on Wednesday. I can say for sure he's supposed to be evaluated 2 weeks post-injury. I think he's a week into the hamstring injury and is progressing well from what I can see. But I just want to talk about our team. Right now, having played – what have I played? 36 games so far this season. We're 41 or 42 games in on the year. We're currently standing at 25-16, which is pretty good if you ask me, considering all the injuries that we've had throughout the year. We're in third place. I think a lot of different guys have stepped up on our roster. I know you've been watching a lot of league pass on the Pelicans. Nazi's played extremely well. Devontae had a great game last night. Jose's been great all year for us. We've had a lot of guys come off the bench and really impact and have transformed into starters. Trey Murphy, Jackson Hayes has been great for us lately. We've had a lot of guys playing, quality basketball and impacting towards winning. And I think that'll help us down the stretch of the season when we're getting ready for the postseason.
Yeah, JV bullied a little bit. Was bullying a little bit against the Wizards yesterday or on Monday. But I'm wondering what that feeling like is for you. Just whenever Zion isn't around, and you haven't had BI for like 20 games, just sort of popping into that lead role. And is it a comfort level for you? Is it just like, hey, it's just a little bit more of what I already do anyway, or do you kind of just selfishly like it?
I think I look at it as a challenge, right? For me, it's about adapting and figuring out ways to win, figuring out ways to do exactly what I need to do for this team, whether that's scoring, whether that's passing, rebounding, defending, deferring, calling plays, and getting out the way, inserting myself into the game when I need to. I feel like I've always adapted to different roles, and right now we're obviously down. Call it 25 points from one guy, probably 6 rebounds and 5 assists. And then you got another guy who's averaging probably 21, 22 points and 5 rebounds and 5 assists. So obviously I'm not going to score 50 points a night, but I need to be able to be more aggressive. I need to impact from a leadership standpoint, more vocal. And I tell the team, we have less room for error. I think that's extremely important to recognize. There's a small window of opportunity to win basketball games in the league, right? And every possession matters, but when you lose 2 starters and then now Herb's out again, you lose a third starter, there's even less room for error. You got to be more precise. You got to be more sharp, more locked in, more focused, more engaged, and understand that from a preparation standpoint, we're playing 16 games in 30 days. We just finished up 4-6. We have 5-7. And we got tough opponents coming up. So you got to do everything better, everything more precise. And I think the younger guys are starting to understand that. They see me raising my level of play. Obviously, I didn't perform particularly well in the beginning of the season. I wasn't shooting well and I wasn't feeling well. But I've been able to kind of, put together a good stretch of games where I'm impacting, both sides of the ball, scoring efficiently, shooting the ball. I'd say probably 51, 52% over the last 14 or 15 games. So shooting the ball well, getting to the lane, getting to the free throw line and helping. So I obviously say that I do enjoy it. I enjoy having a heavy load. I enjoy having to do a lot because I work to be able to. I condition myself I eat a certain type of way. I sleep. I watch film. I prepare a certain type of way to where I'm comfortable with it. And that's also why they pay me so much money.
I don't know if this is just me, just for the times that I'm watching, but I feel like when you are, when those guys are out and you do have to sort of ramp up your production, it feels like you get off the ball earlier and then just sort of, find your spot because you're so good at like finding the gaps and finding those areas. It would seem like it's a lot trickier when all eyes are on you and you're, handling all the time.
Yeah, I think it's smart to mix it up, right? I'm a guy who can play off the bounce. I'm a guy who can catch and shoot. I can come off screens, and whether that's pick and roll or off ball screens. I'm good in actions where I can set a screen and get a screen. I think it's important that I utilize all of those skill sets. It's nice to play in front of the defense, have the ball in your hands and to get mid pick and rolls and run the offense. But sometimes you need to get away from being in front of the defense. You know what I mean? Whether you're in the corner, starting underneath the basket, mixing up where I start at in possessions, but also where I finish possessions at is really important. Because the defense is obviously more engaged, more locked in. I'm seeing more traps, more hard hedges, more blitzes. So I got to be able to move around and also be comfortable making the pass early and trusting that he's either going to get back to me or the guys are going to make the right decision, and empowering teammates to be more aggressive too, because that's important for them and their confidence.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about you in particular. Like your 3-point shooting is still 40%. It's just, finding those areas in the inside the lane. We're not quite at the trade deadline yet. It's still a month away or so. But when you talk about mid-season acquisitions, it's going to kind of feel like you got one when you get Brandon Ingram back, right? Like, do you think that it's just kind of like it's going to feel like just a different type of, because you played long enough without him, it's going to feel like a different type of team, even just like a heavy upgrade? Because if he goes and sort of progresses to the mean, he'll probably average even more than he did this, when he played the first few games, because only about 20, and the last 3 years he's averaged about 23. So if he gets about 25 a game from here on out once he comes back, like that's adding an all-star. That's got to feel completely different, no?
Yeah, it's definitely going to change the dynamic of our team with his skill set, his ability to play on the ball. He can post. He's got a mid-post game. We'll obviously get to the bonus a little bit quicker. Transition will be better. Offensively, we'll score more. It's just about, for him, making sure that he's ready mentally and physically, the conditioning aspect of it, because he hasn't played in a while. But like you said before, it will feel like a new acquisition because we're like 3 different teams, right? We've had Z, we've had just me and Z, we've had just me and BI, and we've had just me out there, right? Where in terms of the big 3, when I say just me, we have to get used to playing with each other. And I've gotten used to playing with both of them on separate occasions, right? They've got used to playing with me on separate occasions. And we only played 10 games with the trio out there together. So we got to get more experience together. We got to get into the fire, if you will, have some road games, have some tough matchups for us to where we have to work things out and really see what we're made of. But I look forward to the challenge and look forward to seeing how we come together again once everybody is healthy and once we have the rest of our roster healthy, because that's also been an issue throughout this season for us as well.
Your GM is technically Trajan Langdon, right?
Yeah, Trajan's the GM. Griff is the president of basketball operations. I think that's the title.
So Trajan and Griff will probably be looking around for the next month. And one of the teams that seems sort of ripe for the picking because they've had a surprisingly bad year and a good core of players that people are going to want to ask about, the Raptors. They were with Scotty Barnes and Van Vliet and Siakam and OG. Like they thought they had a solid core, especially if you assume that Barnes gets better from his first year to his second. And they've just kind of fallen off. The defense hasn't been there. The shot making hasn't been there. And now people are wondering if, their players will be available. What's curious to me is, so like in baseball, you'll always have a guy or two that just has an out of nowhere bad season. You look at his stats and it's just like everything's down for a year. And you could probably point to injuries and stuff like that, but you don't see that often in basketball. You mentioned earlier about you not feeling great early in the season. So that's one of those situations where you could say, okay, injuries and illness might affect you for a longer period of time, maybe affect your season throughout. But does that feel like something that can happen to you? Have you had one season where you're just like, man, that whole year was kind of a throwaway for me?
Early in my career, when I was not playing or battling injuries, it was difficult, like you said before, because you come back from the injury, but you're not necessarily ready or mentally ready to get out there and be your full true self. You're still kind of nervous about If it's a foot injury, you're nervous about going to the paint. You're nervous about landing. If it's a hand injury, you get hit every time you drive to the hole, every time you make a pass, every time you contest a shot. So you're a little more calculated with your movements. You're a little more afraid. You're more weary of where you're at in the court. And I think that takes people time to come back. But in terms of, this is my 10th year in the league. I've been a starter for 8 straight seasons. I've been in the playoffs 9 straight seasons. This will be 10. I think for me, I've had stretches where I haven't performed particularly well. Some of the stretches have been longer than others, where maybe it's 3 games, maybe it's a 5-game stretch where things aren't going well. Maybe it's a month where I'm just shooting extremely poorly. But you always regress to the mean, right? Where the season is so long. There's so many months. There's so many highs and lows. So many times in which your team is doing well, your team is not performing well. You go on winning streaks. It's like you're the best team in the NBA. You lose 3 in a row. They're like, I'm down on this team. They're struggling. And it's like, well, you're going to struggle too if somebody watches you, every other day for 8 months. They're going to see like the best and the worst of you. And I think it's about stemming the tide, and I've done that throughout my career. So I haven't had a season where I was like, that was just a terrible season. I've had years where I'm like, that wasn't the best version of me, but it was an average year for myself, and I still average 20 or whatever, and a few assists and a few rebounds, and I still shoot 44, 45 from the field and close to 40 from 3. So it's like a down year for me is like a really good year for most players, right? Like,
right.
If you think about how I've played throughout my career, where I basically, even though I didn't play my first 2 years, I think my career average is like 19, 4 and 4 on like 45, 39.
It shouldn't even really count until you starting, because it's such a huge jump in terms of the numbers.
Yeah, so if you count me as a starter, it's like 22, 4, 4, 45, 39, 82. So it's like that's a down years included. That's a pretty solid career where I was pretty efficient. You kind of know what you're going to get from me because my game is just the way I play. It fits in. It fits when you just post up. It fits when you play a fast tempo offense. Like, I'm able to kind of figure out how to play depending on how the game evolves.
Now, you played the Raptors once this season. I'd have to pull up the box score to see exactly what you did, but just curious what your thoughts. You didn't. Were you there?
I was coming back from COVID, but I was there.
Okay.
Just a correction. Griff is the executive vice president of basketball operations.
Executive vice president.
Thanks,
more important than
the president. He's the executive vice president.
But yeah, you had Zeke played in that game. He had 33, 12 of 15, typical. But yeah, what do you think about them and like sort of why you have this random fall off or drop off?
I think they play extremely hard. But they got a lot of similar pieces, and I think that's what they're going through right now. They got a lot of big, strong, athletic wings. I don't know who plays the center position for them. I think they had Thad Young playing center, so that may be something they want to look at because he's more of a 4, but he can play some 5. But I think in terms of what they need or what they're lacking, something's going to happen. I don't know what. There's rumblings about certain players on the team not being happy and due to tampering. I can't speak to that, but I think they're gonna move someone at some point. I don't know what type of picks they have lined up, but something needs to change because they're way too talented to be struggling the way they've been struggling throughout the season. They got too many good pieces. They got too many guys who are not only impactful and quality NBA players on that team, but that would be impactful and quality players on other teams and probably have larger roles depending on who they decided to move. And I think based on the success Toronto's had historically, in terms of how active they've been at the deadline, how they won their championship was being active, right? They're going to figure out a way to improve. They're going to figure out a way to tinker with a roster a little bit, and they're going to get the best out of their players because that's what they've done historically. And you look at the likes of like Fred VanVleet, for example. They got undrafted guys that are impactful because of the development, because of the 705, I think it's 705 or 405 Raptors or something like that. Because of the G League team, they develop players extremely well and get the most out of their guys. So I look for them to definitely rebound, whether that's continuity continuing to figure itself out or making a move.
Yeah, they're the type of organization that doesn't want to like back out of relevancy, right? You got to stay in it because you can stay out of it for a long time if you're one of those organizations that aren't like, everybody's eyes are on going to. So it feels like they'll do something to tinker, but still be a play-in team so they can kind of get the best of both worlds, get some acquisitions, but still feel good about where they're at. Another team that you played a little bit more recently, and you actually did play that game against the Brooklyn Nets. I got to say this. So I'm an ultimate jinx. Last week in the podcast, I think I said that the Brooklyn Nets winning streak doesn't seem like it's going to end soon. That was before realizing that they were playing you guys 2 games later. And that same night that we recorded that, they lost to the Bulls. And speaking of being a jinx, the other night in Miami, KD goes down with the knee injury, and he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks, going to be reevaluated. Got an MCL sprain. First of all, huge bummer, because at this age, it probably feels like, his MVP chances are gone when you miss a month and have such competition. But what did you see from the Nets with KD? Because when you played them, they were, just after their winning streak and still, looking really good.
Yeah, I seen aggression. I seen a team that was unified, well coached together, and just supreme skill set with shooting, right? You look at the supreme skill set of KD. Obviously, he didn't shoot well that night, but you know who he is. He gets to his spots. He's shooting 59% on contested jumpers, basically pull up twos. Having a career year, probably the most efficient year of his career, post Achilles, post MCL, at over 30 something. It's crazy to see how athletic he is still. And I think his weight has something to do with it. We talked about this in our locker room. His ability to bounce back and recover from injuries and still sustain a high level of greatness at this age has a little bit to do with his body type, right? To where most times guys gain weight when they get injured. That's the downfall, because you can't move, especially when it's a lower extremity injury. But he's so skinny, even if he gained weight, I don't think it would affect him. But he's also a basketball junkie, a purist with skill set as his best attribute, to where he could be heavier or slower and he's still taller than you. He's still more skilled than you, and he still shoots more accurate than you. And I think that's a great skill set to have. Kyrie obviously didn't shoot well that night either. He hits a big shot down the stretch, and he's just a wizard. He gets to where he wants to go on the court. I don't think I've seen a guy with that type of skill set. He has a mid post. He has great finishing around the basket, great
That's
handle.
ridiculous.
He's a wizard and a basketball junkie who really just studies and hones in on his craft. And you got a bunch of shooters around him, and you got Nick Claxton in the middle. Like, the guy who's just super athletic, like a rubber band. He's skinny. He does all the dirty work, offensive rebound opportunities. Royce O'Neal does a lot of the dirty work. But they've surrounded those guys with shooting, which is a premium. You got Ben Simmons playmaking and screening and guarding. And you got a bunch of shooters around him to stretch the floor and to make it so that when you double KD or you blitz Kyrie, or whatever the case may be, it's a swing to a shooter, and it's a swing to another great shooter, and it's a swing to another 40% three-point shooter, which is hard to guard.
Well, the way the Heat were playing them the other day is just, I didn't actually watch the first half, but in the second half, after Kyrie, I think, already had 24, they were just blitzing the heck out of him, forcing the ball out of his hands. But then you're just scared to death, because eventually it's going to get back to KD or Seth Curry or Joe Harris in the corner, and it's going to be, a wide open shot. So I don't know how you play them, how you defend them if they're both at their peaks. And then you have a Nick Claxton who's like, just elevated himself to, all defensive caliber. So it's a tough team, but you miss a month with Kevin Durant, and then you're relying on Kyrie Irving to stabilize you for a month. It's going to be probably pretty telling just how good that team is around KD for the next month or so, or maybe 3 weeks. He might not be out that long.
Yeah, it's definitely going to give other guys opportunities to do more, have more of an expansive role. Seth Curry will be more aggressive. You'll look for him to get more pick and rolls. They'll probably want some actions for him. Joe Harris will have to shoot more. Patty Mills may get into the rotation. TJ Warren, who was a great pickup for them, is getting back into rhythm. They'll run some ISOs for him. Obviously, it'll be a lot of Kyrie, but this will be a test to see how deep they are. And I think it's good for teams to have to go through this. Obviously, you never want to see anybody get hurt. Like, let me preface this with that. Like, you don't want to see players get hurt. But in the event that a player is out, absent, gets injured, whatever the case may be, teams get to really see how deep they are. They can assess the rest of the roster more, because you don't have that crutch you can just throw the ball to and say, go win the game for us. Now you have to be more precise with execution. And sometimes coaches, they're able to get more into their X and O bag, right? You got your ATLs really matter now, because you don't have that 7-foot, Grim Reaper who can just, do whatever he wants out there. I think you get to see what your team's made of, and you either fold or you rise to the occasion. And I think, the teams who have success later in the season figure out a way to win the games they're supposed to win, and steal a couple while they're, star players out.
Yeah, shout out to Jacques Vaughn doing his thing as the head coach there. But also, I think the guy who will basically figure out what kind of impact he can have with this team throughout their playoff run, probably Ben Simmons, because he's going to have to step up his game and just be more, whether it be the distributor, maybe look to score a little bit more, because he has taken shots in the paint. He doesn't look uncomfortable there. And if they sort of give him more responsibility because KD is out, like he might start getting into a rhythm, feeling himself. And by the time, KD gets back, he's the playmaker that he was, more aggressive.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have to be more aggressive. Having played against him, I think obviously he missed a lot of basketball and he had some back issues. He had some things that kind of affected his movement patterns. And I think it's key for their success for him to be an offensive threat. At times he has to look to score. He has to look to be aggressive, get to the basket, do some of those finishes that he's done historically, because it frees everything up. It makes it more difficult to guard the other guys when you know he's trying to score. When you know he's just passing, you're able to kind of focus more so on the shooters, focus more so on the star players on that roster. And he's so big, so talented, so fast. When he gets into the paint, it's hard to stop him, right? Like he can pivot, he can pass still. He's got those hooks. He's good with both hands, right hand hooks, quick finishes, high off the glass with his left hand as well. I think it's about him finding his comfort, finding his rhythm, and then understanding that now that KD's out, you got to be more aggressive.
I'm bringing this up for a reason, but today is your son's first birthday, is it not?
Today is my son's first birthday. I just did an Instagram collab with my wife just now for this video that we had put together. Shout out to Justin putting together this video for us. We sent him a bunch of pictures and videos of Jacobi throughout the last 12 months. And that was hard to narrow down because obviously I have like 70,000 photos and most of them are Jacobi and videos and just random moments that we've seen throughout his 1 year of life.
Now he's Jacobi James. Are you calling him JJ, or are you not? Are you breaking that pattern right away?
I call him Jacobi right now. I think he'll figure out what he wants his nickname to be, or kids and the teachers and friends will just call him something. But I just call him Jacobi right now.
I figured you would just keep going and just maybe call him David James. You go DJ, and then the next DJ. Edward James, EJ. But regardless, the reason I bring that up, and happy birthday, Jacobi, is shortly after that last year. Well, also he was at 11:59 p.m. baby, and so do you like check and see maybe the clocks are wrong? Could it be 11:11 instead of or 1:11 instead of 1:10, or was that not an option?
I asked her, my wife. I said, "Do you want him to be born on the first or the second?" She's like, "He's being born today," and I was like, "Well, you running out of time." It's like you running out of time.
Gotta hurry.
Just a heads
down
up,
to the last second. Talk about a buzzer beater. But
it was funny.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because less than a month later, I believe you got traded, right?
I got traded February 7th. I think his appointment was the 10th. And I told the team I just need to go to his 4-week appointment and then I could come. So I went to his 4-week appointment and then I went home, ate lunch, and then I went right to the airport.
So of all the like trade stories or trade experiences you might have heard over the league, like where do you consider yours? Because I can't imagine all those things going on in your life at that time that it's just like, oh, great, hon, let's just go to New Orleans.
Yeah, we talked about it. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of the process. I was fortunate enough to have great dialogue with Joe Cronin and the Trailblazer organization, Chauncey, some of the players. And, I was in contact with my agent throughout. And I said, it's time for me to go. What are the options? What teams are interested? And we started kind of talking through it behind the scenes. And, I talked to my wife about it, understanding that she was pregnant at the time, right? Think about it. She had the baby in February. So when we started talking about stuff, we hadn't had the baby yet, and we understood the baby was coming, and we knew what that was going to look like. But it was more so sacrifice. Sometimes you got to make sacrifices, in your family, in your household. Happiness matters, balance matters, and you just try to figure it out. But that was a situation in which we knew it was time. We knew the timing wasn't ideal, but we also knew that, when you get the All-Star break, I would be able to come home. So I was like, okay, so I'll basically be gone a few weeks. I'll be able to come home. And then we just trying to figure out when they were going to come to New Orleans. But with pediatrician, a new baby, with all our resources there, it just didn't make sense for them to come to New Orleans. So it was tough. It was hard, having a baby, being away from the baby right after you have it. I went on the road right after he was born. It was like a 5-game road trip. I ended up meeting a team in the South, but it was tough. But in life, you got to figure out, how to balance things out. You got to figure out, happiness and what joy looks like and understand that, your parents work too, right? Like,
Yep.
that's the way it goes. You got to be able to provide. You got to be able to figure out how to keep an identity with a child. Although the child is basically your identity at this point, you're just such and such as parent. It's a cool part of life that you enjoy, and it's the most rewarding thing I've ever been a part of. And I don't think anything gets better than being a parent.
So that's got to be, you hear all these times about these players who feel shortchanged or feel betrayed because they didn't hear about their trade until the day of, or that's got to be the ideal situation, right? Like, you probably tell this story to a couple of people who have been traded and they're just like, damn it, why couldn't I get that type of treatment for my front office? That's got to just be like just a respect level from the, as long as you were in Portland, right?
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful, and it's unfortunate that players have to go through that, being traded and not knowing, being unaware, finding out online, on TV. You got guys driving to the facility and they find out, in the car or while they're in the facility. I think it's unfortunate part of the business. Obviously, some things need to be held close to the vest, but I think guys deserve to know before the rest of the world. Like, could you imagine, if, normal America or beyond would find out that their job had been switched while they're at the job and no one told them? And like the family dynamic of that, when your kids are in school, your significant other works, like, that's a lot to have to process and deal with. And I think the human element is oftentimes lost in the sports world, because everything is so public. What you do, how you play, your performance. Could you imagine if your performance from your boss was like public, like after every day?
Yeah.
Every day you had to talk about what happened, what went well today, what didn't go well. Like, you wrote this article, but like, it's that's a tough part of the business, and that's why we get compensated so well. But that human element of trade deadline time it makes my stomach hurt when I see some of these guys and know them personally, and the way it's done is oftentimes not ideal. It's just a terrible part of the sports world, and I hate it. I hate that part of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that about the human element, because it's an easy transition. Because I was watching, I don't think you've seen it yet, but I was watching the SHAQ doc on HBO Max, and I covered SHAQ when he was in Miami from the trade until he left, and then did a little story on him after he left the Phoenix, just on the little blow up between him and Pat Riley. And it's crazy. Like, I think of myself as like, a people person first, right? I think of all, professional athletes or anybody that I work with as humans first. And I never try to be too intrusive or anything, right? But there's some people that just have a larger than life personality and experience. And when you sort of, like with SHAQ, when I jumped into his life, which was 2004, he had already been a 3-time champion, probably the biggest name in the sport at the time. And as much as I wanted to think of him as human, it didn't feel human, right? So like I had good relationship with him, and then it went bad, and then it was good. And all of it is just like, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how can this guy who has everything in the world be so insecure, right? How could he have these issues? Like, you're the man, like, just, you're above everybody else. And then you watch this doc and you realize that, oh, like, he wasn't great in high school. Like, he had that growth spurt, and you can relate. And then all of a sudden he's still adjusting to his body. There's this big guy who is not good and frankly a little embarrassed by it. And so then you've got, his dad, who's not his biological dad, but his dad just sort of hammering home like, hey, you've got to be great. You've got to be great. You've got to be great. And it just brought such a human element to SHAQ that the next time I see him, I just want to give him a big hug, like everything from, that he went through with Kobe, and then like obviously Kobe passing and him saying, I wish I would have talked to him more. And, his sister passing, saying, I wish I would have talked to her more. It's just a lot. And if somebody of that size and that stature, you just never think of him as human. It's so strange to see that. And I highly recommend watching it, because it just brings him just into a more like relatable light.
Yeah, I haven't seen the documentary, but I did see some excerpts of the sit downs where he talks about regrets and not mending certain relationships, not contacting people more. And you could see the hurt in his eyes. You could see the hurt on his face, the fact that he'll never be able to have certain conversations again, well, at least in human form, until he passes. But I think like you said before, the crazy part is you look at these athletes, right? He has the Superman tattoo. He impersonates a character in which he is almost above life. He's big, he's strong, he's athletic, he has all this money. He's in commercials. He has all these endorsement deals. Now he has ownership and equity in almost everything. Like, you think that everything is going great. And a lot of times, people are fighting battles behind closed doors that nobody knows about, right? They have these battles, they have these issues, they have trauma, whether that's from childhood or from adulthood, to where it affects you. And you don't necessarily wear it in your sleeve, and you don't hear about it until you see these stories where they kind of peel back the curtain, right? Like, in this society, we only show you what we want you to see, but we're all battling something, and there's something deeper that we're going through. And I think these documentaries and these sit-down interviews and things of that nature really kind of show you the fact that, like, no matter how big he is, 7 foot, 300 pounds, whatever, no matter how many championships he won, there's certain conversations that he wishes he could have. There's certain elements to life that he feels like he didn't take full advantage of. And now there's the regret that we live with forever. And I think that stems from, childhood, like you said before, him being raised by his stepfather, his stepfather serving, and then, kind of putting that discipline in him. And then you look at the relationship, the tumultuous relationship that him and Kobe had throughout, and they talk about it, to where he's at now, right? He's still on TV, still a face of the NBA, one of the greatest players ever, and he's still battling some things. And I think that's important for people to note. It's okay to have, moments where you don't feel like things are going well, but it's also important that you express them and talk to someone and get the proper help, because it's not healthy to live that type of lifestyle to where you pretend things are okay when they're not.
Yeah, he had the perfect cover too, because he was just a giant of a man. It's like, nothing can affect me, so why would I be bothered by these things? And like, so he taught, little snippets of the doc. I feel like I'm going to spoil it for you, but he mentioned that ever since his sister passed, he doesn't sleep very well, and it's heartbreaking. There was a time, I mean, this was in 2005 when I covered the team. They ended up losing to Detroit in 7 games in the conference finals. That entire dialogue was about a rib injury that Dwayne Wade had, and that's why they didn't win. When you realize that SHAQ in the regular season, apparently Jermaine O'Neal hit him in the thigh with a knee, and SHAQ's thigh was jacked up, and he had to shoot it up to play in that series. And so he wasn't himself, but he wasn't going to let anybody know, because it's SHAQ. Like, he's a beast. You can jump all over him, he won't even feel it. And so all those things, you look at him and it's just like, man, he was fighting off any sort of real emotion and not really, showing all of that. And here he was carrying that this whole time. And he wanted to be a teddy bear that was likable, and everybody thought he was, a scary beast because he was dunking on people. And it's such a contrast to see, the human element, like you said. And so anyway, highly recommend that one.
I'm gonna definitely check it out. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And like you said before, the layers that you get exposed to in some of these sit downs, it's eye-opening, because people do a good job of hiding things, but also the storytelling aspect of certain stories that they never share, they begin to share them, which is really cool, and something that I enjoy about a lot of documentaries and sit downs.
There was one thing that I knew: Pat Riley was in this doc, and I think he sat in the same chair that all the others interviewed in, and the chair swallows Pat. And I guarantee you that Pat Riley did not like sitting in that chair for this documentary. A couple things before we go here. You got to go. We have had talks, right? The league has had talks, and you have obviously been involved with them on an in-season tournament. I'm just curious, because this would be around the time where maybe it would be ending, maybe even to be starting. Who knows? My guess is it would be starting earlier in the season. But what do you think, A, that might kind of look like, and B, just feel like for a player if it comes in, at a time where it's, the doldrums of the NBA season and not really too exciting yet?
Yeah, I just want to say, first and foremost, players have to agree to this. We have to agree to the setup. We have to agree to what it's all going to look like, location, when the games are played, all those things. So players and people that may listen to this understand that aspect of it, and we have to collectively agree between the league, governors, etc. But in any event that we do and it kind of progresses, I think, like you said before, it'll probably start early in the season. They'll probably pick a day or days in which, playing level games are played, kind of like conference games, right? Where, you have to play for us, right? We have to play the Dallas Mavericks a certain amount of times. We have to play teams within our not just division, but what's it called? You got division,
Conference,
and then what is it, like the little not West and East, but you got like the Southwest or whatever, like those little divisions as
Those are the
well.
divisions, yeah.
So yeah, those are the divisions. So you'll have the breakdown where you play those games, and then, basically based on a performance, based on record, there'll be a tournament that happens out of that. And I think once you compete as a player, once you get out there on the court, you just want to compete, but compensation matters, what that looks like, how we're able to get sponsorship around the game. I think all those things will be important for players. And I think the important factor here is that we won't be forced to play more games. I think if you win the championship, you end up playing maybe one more game, maybe not, depending on the breakdown and how they do it, between probably 78 and 82 is my guess. Games played with the play-in, but I think that's important because you don't want to be at a disadvantage because you compete in the play-in tournament and you end up, a player gets hurt or whatever the case may be, and you end up losing out on opportunities to have the proper rest that's necessary to complete this type of season. I know you're going through it now, covering and having covered for so long. This is the time in the year where it's hard. Mentally, it's hard. Physically, you get out of 2 holidays, you get that little break, but it's not really a break. It's a break for everybody in your family and everybody around you. But if you work in the sports world, it's not really a break. And the mental side of it really begins to wear on you. I had some conversations with some players, on FaceTime. We were setting up meetings and obviously going through CBA. And you could just kind of see the look on everybody's face. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody's tired. Bodies are starting to break down, as we can see across the league. It's a tough part of the season. So we got to be really strategic about how we implement this tournament, what the rest looks like in between games and all that stuff, because we want the quality of play to remain at a level that we're accustomed to. And I think this is a year in which the parity is great, right? Like, a lot of teams are competing. Teams that haven't necessarily had success in previous years are in position to potentially make the playoffs or the playing game. There's upsets every night where you got teams who are higher seeded who, could lose to a team that's last in the division. I think we're in a really great spot. We just have to be careful about how we do this strategically, so that, one, everybody wants to compete and there's the right financial incentive, because we are all players who love the game, but this is also how we take care of our family and we need our bodies to do that. But also the timing of which the games are on TV and what that looks like for our fans, so that they can enjoy it, whether that's on TV or on Amazon or YouTube or whatever the case may be. Who knows what that's going to look like. But I think those are the things that I'm thinking about from a player standpoint, is timing of games. Where is the tournament played at? Is it an off-site location? Is it a third-party location? Is it in Vegas? Is it in Miami? Is it in New York? Like, what does that look like? And what's the space look like? And last thing I'll say is, as somebody who played in the bubble, I thought it was really cool how we could watch other games. I think that aspect of it was great, because we play all year. And very rarely does the schedule align in which you're in the city and you could go watch an NBA game. But I think it would be cool if it was not like necessarily tournament format AAU style, but in a setting in which, like, you're in the tournament, there's 8 teams left or however many teams qualify.
Yeah, 8 teams sounds right. You go back to the same area, and then you can watch the quarterfinals, semifinals, and if you're in the finals.
That would be dope. That would be really cool. Like, in my eyes, right? This is just my opinion. This isn't something we agreed to or anything like that. This is just what I think. I think that would be cool aspect of it, because I know a lot of guys enjoy being able to go watch. Like, I go watch the Clippers and the Lakers and sit courtside. Like, that was dope.
It has to be a different element for the players, because otherwise all you're doing is selling the fans and saying, hey, this means more to them. Watch them play this. It's really, you're just adding a trophy to regular games. And so if there needs to be a different element, and it's like you said, like, I do think there's a lot to that bubble performance. And it wasn't just because there was no fans. It was because, hey, no travel. And maybe I could sit there and watch and pick up a few things from the other team. And so, or maybe just on the outside, accidentally pick up some tips from people who say too much. Like, all that stuff could be a factor in these things. And it could make for, really good basketball if you do it that way. That's a great point.
Yeah, the no travel was beautiful, man. I was getting treatment at 2 a.m. Like, we play a game, I would watch a game, come back, I get an ice tub action, I get dry needling or acupuncture. Like, I was able to get treatment. I mean, obviously, if you got your own people, you do it, but respectfully, for people that work for me, I try not to make them do 2 a.m. treatments. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'll see you in the morning or something. But, like, we were able to get treatment around the clock. You're able to take better care of your body. And that no flying, like, for those people that fly for a living, even if they don't play a sport, like, when you travel for work, it's a lot. It's a lot on the body, the mind. You don't know where you're at sometimes. I'm going to the room in the last city. I don't know the time zones. Like, your body is just confused, especially when you do it for an entire season and you put seasons together and years together.
Just brag to who wasn't there? Steph wasn't there, right? In the bubble?
No, he wasn't.
No, there's something you got on him. You didn't get to play in that. I'm pretty sure that's all we got. I did want to ask you something. I don't know if you saw this. You know Jared Jeffries, former NBA player?
Yes.
Former Indiana star too. He was on The Price is Right. And he
Seriously?
won like a new car. Yeah, he won a new car. I
hilarious.
forget what it was. It was like a little Toyota something. Now, he was way too excited for somebody who's played in the NBA for a handful of years to win a car that's probably around $25,000. But would you want to go on a game show like that? Like, I'm sure you watched them growing up, but like to me, I would kill to go on that show. I don't care what the prize is. And like I don't know if he was faking it because he was, an audience member technically, and he had to be all excited, but he was geeked about winning that car.
I think he was probably more impressed that he won, so he was probably happy with himself as opposed to the gift. But he could be happy that he got a gift that he can gift to somebody. He can re-gift that car.
That's a good point. But I mean, it's on national TV. If you're re-gifting that, everybody kind of knows it. What's your favorite Price is Right game?
Honestly, I'm a Family Feud guy. So
wow.
I like the Family Feud episodes, especially when they have like either families or athletes or like teams where they're kind of going against each other. I like to see Family Feud mainly because Steve Harvey is just hilarious and you get some crazy answers. So I think I like Family Feud.
Well, Steve Harvey has just resuscitated that whole thing because back in the day when the old host who's passed away now, Richard Dawson, he used to do too much. He used to kiss every woman every time before
in the mouth. I've seen the snippet. That was wild.
Imagine Steve Harvey doing that today. Talk about cancel culture. But anyway,
anyone doing that today.
Congratulations to Jared Jeffries on winning a brand new car. Talk about a checklist of things he has done in life, man. That guy's got quite a few.
Dope bucket list moment for sure. But no, I'm good on my end. If you're good on your end, hopefully next time we speak, maybe we get some players back that are currently out. Hopefully we're in position to move up the charts in the Western Conference. And
happy birthday, Jacobi.
Hopefully my son has a great birthday.